Josh Jenkins and Cam Luke. I just want to talk a little bit about Bailey Smith because it is interesting. On the back of the trade period, which ended last week, where he was, I wouldn't say a hot topic of conversation, JJ, but there is no doubt the name Bailey Smith had been on the lips of some that is a possible mover. The Bulldogs and Bailey Smith's management really discounted it or discarded it fairly early in the piece. But I quote John Ralph here from the Herald Sun that he has the chances of him moving on seem to be about 80%. 80%. So at the end of next year when he's out of contract, the feeling is 80% that Bailey Smith will move. Mitch Cleary, Sam McClure, two very tapped-in journalists on their Tradies podcast mentioned Essendon and Geelong and Hawthorn and Collingwood all keen to have a crack at the Western Bulldogs. What do you make of this? 80% Bailey Smith to move on. What do you make of it?
Well, there's no such thing as too early when it comes to player movement, is there? Because we've literally just finished the most recent player transactional period, aka trade period, and we're about to go into, I guess, an off-season / pre-season for clubs, and then a full season, and then a finals schedule before we get back around to this. But I think it'll be the most consistent and persistent, not the biggest story that'll happen across the upcoming footy season, but I think it'll be the one that just nips away and nips away and nips away because Bailey Smith is, first and foremost, a fine footballer, but he's also a larger-than-life creature, for lack of a better term, when it comes to the entertainment space and the social media space as well. So whatever he does comes with a lot of fanfare, for good, bad, or otherwise. So it is going to be a big story next year until he either signs with the Dogs, re-signs with the Dogs, or signs elsewhere.
Is it the good oil for Cobram Estate, Australia's most awarded extra virgin olive oil, grown, harvest and first cold pressed in northern Victoria? They have got an interesting season ahead, the Western Bulldogs, because Luke Beveridge is still 2 years to go in a contract, but most clubs don't allow or don't like a coach to be out of contract into a year. We did see this year with the Ken Hinkley situation. You got Jamarra Ugle-Hagan, who is being courted by a number of clubs, out of contract. Tim English, the All-Australian ruckman, is out of contract. And, of course, Bailey Smith, who we're talking about right now. Off the temper text, Bailey who? Well, I would argue that Bailey Smith might be the most marketable player in the AFL. Now, I'm not suggesting that he is anywhere near the form that he was in late 2021 and early 2022 that was disrupted by his own actions. It also must be put on the table. But if they're able to get him back to that level, JJ, one, it gives him more of a chance or a desire to want to remain at the club. And two, it also pushes up his trade value. But three, 80% 12 months out makes you ask the question, did the Bulldogs miss a trick by maybe not trying to use the leverage this offseason? Because 80% is a pretty high number.
Yeah, it is. It doesn't leave a lot of room. If you told me that I was 80% chance of winning the lotto tonight or tomorrow night, I'd be pretty confident. I'd be pretty happy. I reckon I'd be house shopping on the old internet, as they call it. But yeah, that's a big number. So much can change. I'm not discrediting John Ralph by any stretch of the imagination. He knows more about the topic than I do. But 80% is a big number, and so much can change. Because if you tell me the Dogs go on a run and he's the B&F winner and they win a flag, I think his mind might be in a little bit of a different space. Now, you've got to remember this player's coming off the worst individual season of his career, disappointment at club level, and a fair enough amount of controversy around the team just in terms of the coach and his behaviour and what was happening at the Dogs. So he would, and most of those players, and I've been in this position, at the end of a season, when you're emotion charged, you've got things in your mind, well, guess what? This is what I'm going to do when I get an opportunity. But as I said, you go through a summer, you go through a pre-season, a few things change. The Dogs have changed up all of their assistant coaches, basically. You have a good individual season, you play finals, you have some success. Your point of view is a little bit different. So there is so much water to go under the bridge for Smith and for the Dogs. And for the other stars that are out of contract, Tim English and Jamarra Ugle-Hagan, who also, Cam, newsflash, will be looking for a big bag of cash.
As we sit right now, what is what is the order of which you have importance when it comes to signing English, Bailey Smith, and Jamara Ugle-Hagan? Of course, Aaron Norton, that deal that was announced at their best and fairest a couple of weeks ago. So they ticked off one of the main things they had to do, and that was re-sign one of their young guns to a deal in the offseason. Give me the importance. Give me the list. 1, 2, and 3. What's the most important?
Well, I had Norton at 2 in the quartet. He's already done. So Jamara Ugle-Hagan was my number 1 of the 4. So clearly he's number 1 of the 3 remaining. And I think... in fact, I'm certain as I can be, there will be clubs, they will be making ginormous, I'm not even going to use a real word, Cam, they'll be making ginormous plays for Jamara Ugle-Hagan because they will have seen what I've seen. I've seen everything I need to know about the young man. He presents at the footy. He's an athletic specimen. He's a long kick. He can kick goals. He gets involved when the other team's got the ball. He's got a thirst for the contest. I've seen all I need to see, and the young man is still a very, very young man. He's going to be a star of the competition. He's not far away already. So he's number 1. English is number 2 for mine. He's a real, it's a real discussion, Tim English, because everyone will tell you, a lot of people will tell you, I shouldn't say everyone, a lot of people will tell you you shouldn't pay Ruckman a heap of money. Yet, if he's on the open market, take out Melbourne and take out Fremantle because they've got highly paid Ruckman already, I think everyone else makes a massive offer to him. So that's the contradiction that everyone has. And then I've got Bailey Smith at 3rd. But just because I've got him last on the list, don't think that I don't have a high opinion of him. I would love to get my hands on Bailey Smith if I am coaching a football club.
Off the temper text, straight up, SEN, just STFU. You vultures trying to pinch all their good players. It's Jason in Geelong. We're not trying to pinch anyone. We're simply reporting the fact that Bailey Smith is coming out of contract and is insanely talented, even though he's been a little bit out of form. And John Ralph has put it today on the record. You media blokes, unbelievable. 80%, 12 months away. Must be bored with everything else in sport. Start earning your paycheck. That's a cheer. He did say cheers, Tony, so we ended it nicely. I think this is an absolute conversation, and I would have Bailey Smith above Tim English when it comes to the importance. I think Jamara Ugle-Hagan, most certainly, where he does sit, and the fact that, it's already been reported Sydney are probably going to have another crack, and the Pies sniffing around. I think anyone who in particular probably needs that number 1 forward will be asking the question of Jamara Ugle-Hagan. I fully expect him to stay at the Western Bulldogs. Now, Bailey Smith, I'm not as sure, and Tim English, you are right, JJ. Everyone says, the Ruckman, and I am one of those people who believe that paying a Ruckman $1 million, 1.1, 1.2 as the salary cap does rise, does hurt you a little bit on the back end. And Nathan Buckley put this on the agenda when he spoke on the Brodie Grundy situation. He said, look, we didn't want to let him go. We would have been crucified had we let Brodie Grundy go. But I am paraphrasing, but he said it would have been better for Brodie, better for the club, better for the salary cap going forward. And the fact that 12 months ago, they let Brodie Grundy go and they were able to add depth players on the back of it. Some have included, Bobby Hill, who ended up playing and dominating a grand final, McStay, who's important, Billy Frampton, who's a premiership player, Tom Mitchell, who was incredible on grand final day. As much as I understand his market value is so high, you can count on one hand how many high-profile, highly paid ruckmen have been a part of premiership teams. And that's in the last 20 years. And that's the question that the Dogs... I have no doubt Tim English will stay at the Bulldogs. None. And the proof won't be in the pudding, it'll be in the eating. But if you lose a couple of those depth players, of which the Dogs have had some question marks around them, you got to ask yourself, was signing a ruckman at 1.1 the right way to go about it? When you have someone like Rory Lobb, who is on your pay list, and I know he's not keen to play ruck, but he would absolutely do enough of a job to be able to make sure that team wins games.
I don't know what the right answer is because I've come with a problem but not a solution. So everyone, or again, I shouldn't say everyone, but so many people are telling us don't pay the ruckman $1 million. Not because they're not worth it, but because history is telling us you can get by with Darcy Cameron on $400K and Mason Cox on $400K. Two players are on less than one highly paid ruckman. Max Gawn is basically the exception to the rule across the past 10 or so years. Yet, those same people who are saying that are going to say if you can give me Tim English at $1 million a year for the next 6 or 7, they're going to take him up on that and they're going to sign him. So I don't know what the right answer is. I keep coming back to, I'm worried less about the position. I'm worried more about the fact if I can acquire another good player at $1 million, that's what very good players cost anyway, I'll take him. I'll take him. I mean, if my issue becomes I shouldn't be paying a player in that position that amount of money, I'll try and figure it out. And the beauty of Tim English is you'll probably be able to figure it out because he does so much more than what a ruckman does in terms of tapping the ball in a ruck contest.
1300 736 736. The Harcourt's open line is open. Just on Bailey Smith. He's 22 years of age and his best football is scintillating. If you think back to that end of 2021, he single-handedly in a couple of games, his ability to hit the scoreboard was crucial in big wins. They, of course, go to Brisbane, second week of the finals. They're on the road. They get it done. I think they were the better part of 3 goals down. He kicks the go-ahead goal and they make a prelim, and he kicks 3 goals in a prelim and plays really well. Now, his start of 2022 was decent, was really good. Now, his own roadblock was hit by his own actions, to which he owned up as close to as better than any AFL player, any sportsman or woman I've ever seen do in recent times. But it most certainly stalled his momentum, and his ability in the team to play where he played his best footy was stopped. Now, I'm not suggesting he hasn't had an opportunity to get back to that level yet, but the Bulldogs need to unlock the Bailey Smith from the end of 2021. The game winner, the guy who stood up and hit the scoreboard. And I'm not saying he necessarily has to play in the guts, because he played some half forward in those wins when they were able to beat Brisbane and Port Adelaide. But for whatever the reason is, Luke Beveridge needs to find a way for that Bailey Smith to re-emerge. Bailey Smith needs to find a way as well, working with Luke Beveridge and the coaches to make sure he plays his best footy. Because if he plays his best footy, and he does that again, and we get back to 2021 Bailey Smith, he will be happier. And whatever the percentage of him leaving, they will dramatically drop. And if he decides to leave, if he plays the Bailey Smith we know he's capable of, and he still decides to leave, then the trade value goes back through the roof, because he isn't a player who is a free agent. It is crucial. It is crucial to have Bailey Smith play his best football for the Dogs to win games, and also if he does choose to leave, to make sure you're able to, on the back of it, able to get something out of it.
Yeah, you're spot on. He's 22 years of age, so there should be no buyer beware, except for the fact.
No, there shouldn't be.
I'm going to take a leap of faith. He does get looked after by Paul Connors, who I know well, but I don't know a single thing about Bailey Smith himself. I've never met him. I've never crossed paths with him. I don't know what he's like at all. I wonder whether fame has come too quickly for him. Not because he's not a talented footballer, but he's one of the rare out-of-the-box young AFL players who has just leapfrogged to the absolute 0.5% of fame that AFL has to offer. He sits in Dustin Martin and Lance Franklin's echelon when you're talking about social media presence and social media popularity. Mm-hmm. Now, Dustin Martin has got 3 Norm Smiths and 3 premierships and has been one of the best, if not the best, big game grand final performer we've ever seen. Lance Franklin's resume speaks for itself, 1,000+ goals. Bailey Smith has played very good football in big finals, but he's still an emerging player. I just wonder whether all the marketing stuff and all the commercials has just distracted him a little bit, because it can happen. I've seen it and I've felt it, and you start to feel yourself a little bit, and you start to just let your mind wander and think about all the other things that are involved in being a superstar at AFL level. Now, that's what he can be, but he hasn't been that for 8 years, 10 years like the other two have. But he sits on that level. He's got more Instagram followers. Now, look, shoot me down for measuring someone on Instagram, but it's a pretty good damn good measure of people's popularity these days. He's got more Instagram followers than any other player in the competition. Anyone. He's
the most marketable player in the AFL right now. I don't subscribe to the theory that...
But Cam.
I don't subscribe to the theory, though, JJ, that's the reason he hasn't been able to get to the same level. I think it's a combination of factors, but it's more within the club than outside of the club. And maybe it's his position he plays on the ground. But I don't subscribe to the theory that he's taken his eye off the ball from playing good footy because he's marketable off the ground.
Has it taken his eyes off the ball, though? Not him choosing to. Has all this stuff, the commercials and all the fame and the inability to go for a coffee and the things that he probably used to rely upon to relax, to get away from the game, to go and prepare for a game, to go out with his mates in between training in between training in the preseason, between the main session in the morning and the afternoon. I don't know. I'm just throwing this stuff around. The thing about him, his fame has risen in a different way that Dusty and Lance Franklin's fame rose. Theirs rose because they were two of the greatest players we've ever seen. And they were also a little bit, there was some mystique about them because neither talked that much. Now, Bailey's has risen for other reasons because he's popular off the field and his looks and all that sort of stuff. And good luck to him. I wish I looked as good as he does. But his fame is a little bit different to theirs, and I just wonder whether the fame has impacted him, not him willingly allowing it to impact him.